What if the thing you have been searching for your entire life was never somewhere else? What if peace was not waiting for you at the end of some perfect morning routine, some spiritual practice, some profound realization, or some future version of yourself? What if awakening was not a destination you had to reach, but something quietly present beneath everything you have been doing to find it? And what if, for just one moment, you stopped trying to become someone who is finally at peace and simply noticed the one who is already here? Perhaps this is the strangest thing about the spiritual journey. We spend years looking for what has never actually been absent. We read books, meditate, search for teachers, analyze our childhoods, study consciousness, chase healing, listen to wisdom, repeat affirmations, change our habits, and constantly ask ourselves, how do I become more aware? How do I become more whole? How do I finally awaken? And underneath all these questions, there is often a quiet assumption hiding in plain sight. The assumption that something is missing. So we begin searching. We search outside ourselves for answers that might finally silence the questions inside. We search for the perfect relationship, the perfect career, the perfect environment, the perfect spiritual teaching. We imagine that somewhere ahead of us is a version of life in which the mind becomes quiet, the wounds disappear, uncertainty dissolves, and we finally feel at home within ourselves. But notice something. The search itself can become another form of escape, not because seeking is wrong, not because learning is wrong, not because healing is wrong. These things can be beautiful. They can open doors that were once invisible. But there comes a moment when even the search for freedom can become another prison. Because if you are constantly trying to arrive somewhere, you may never fully experience where you are. And perhaps that is the deeper exhaustion so many people carry. You wake up and the mind is already running, thinking about yesterday, planning tomorrow, replaying conversations, imagining possibilities, regretting choices, anticipating problems, trying to control outcomes that have not happened yet. You move through your day, but somewhere inside you are always somewhere else. Your body is sitting in one room, while your mind is living in 10 different timelines, and beneath the noise is a subtle feeling. I should be further along by now. I should be happier. I should be more healed. I should be more spiritual. I should have figured this out. I should be less afraid. I should know who I am. And so the mind creates another project. You become the project. You begin trying to fix yourself. And this can become incredibly exhausting because the one trying to fix you is often the same mind that keeps telling you that you are broken. Pause for a moment, not to solve anything, not to improve yourself, just pause. Take a slow breath. Feel the weight of your body wherever you are. Notice the air moving in and out. Notice the sounds around you, and for a few seconds, do nothing. You do not have to understand your life. You do not have to figure out your future. You do not have to become enlightened. You do not have to heal your entire past tonight. Just notice that you are here. There is something deeply mysterious about this simple fact. Before the next thought arrives, you are here. Before the next problem appears, you are here. Before you remember who you are supposed to be, you are here. And perhaps this simple presence is something you have overlooked precisely because it is so ordinary. We often expect awakening to feel like lightning. We imagine a dramatic revelation, a cosmic experience, a moment when the heavens open and every question receives an answer. But what if awakening is much quieter? What if it is simply the moment you stop running from this moment long enough to actually experience it? What if clarity does not arrive because you finally think the right thought, but because you become quiet enough to notice what remains when the thinking stops? For most of our lives, we are trained to move away from discomfort. Something hurts and we distract ourselves. We feel lonely and we reach for a screen. We feel uncertain and we seek information. We feel afraid and we try to control everything. We feel empty and we fill the emptiness with achievement, entertainment, relationships, ambition, consumption, or constant stimulation. We rarely ask the deeper question. What happens if I stay? Not forever, just for one breath. What happens if you do not immediately escape the discomfort? What happens if you allow sadness to exist without turning it into a story? What happens if fear can be felt without immediately becoming a problem to solve? What happens if loneliness is experienced without concluding that something is wrong with you? This is where healing begins to become something different, Not another project, not another identity, but a willingness to stop abandoning yourself whenever something uncomfortable appears. Because beneath much of our suffering is not simply pain, it is resistance to pain. There is the original wound, and then there is the struggle against having the wound. There is sadness, and then there is the thought, I shouldn't be sad. There is fear, and then there is the fear of being afraid. There is uncertainty, and then there is the desperate demand for certainty. Layer upon layer, thought upon thought, resistance upon resistance, until the original experience becomes buried beneath an entire architecture of mental struggle. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop adding another layer. Let the feeling be there, let the breath be there, let the uncertainty be there. Let this moment be exactly as it is for a few seconds. You do not have to like it. Acceptance does not mean approval. It simply means you stop arguing with the fact that it is already happening. This is a profound shift, because the present moment does not require your permission to exist. It is already here. Your life is already unfolding. The breath is already moving. The heart is already beating. Time is already passing. And while the mind is busy trying to create a better reality, reality itself is quietly happening. Perhaps you have spent years trying to control life because somewhere deep inside you learned that control meant safety. If I know what happens next, I will be safe. If I make everyone happy, I will be safe. If I succeed, I will be safe. If nobody rejects me, I will be safe. If I become strong enough, wise enough, successful enough, spiritual enough, perhaps nothing will hurt me again. But life does not make that promise. Life remains unpredictable. People change, bodies age, relationships transform, plans collapse, doors close, things we love disappear, and the ego often interprets this uncertainty as a threat. So it tries harder. It creates plans, strategies, identities, defenses. It tells you that if you can just control enough variables, you can finally relax. But notice the paradox. The more you need everything to be under control before you can relax, the less capable you become of relaxing. You have unknowingly made peace conditional. I will be peaceful when I have enough money, when I find the right person, when my family understands me, when my career works out, when my anxiety disappears, when I heal completely, when I become awakened, when life finally becomes the way I think it should be. And so, peace is always postponed. Tomorrow becomes the place where you allow yourself to live. But tomorrow never arrives. There is only this, always this. The mind may resist that statement because it sounds too simple. It wants a technique, a formula, a secret, something to do. But perhaps the deepest invitation is not to do more. It is to see more clearly, see the movement of the mind, see the constant reaching, see the subtle dissatisfaction, see the way you turn every experience into a judgment, see how quickly the mind says, this should be different, and simply observe. Not with criticism, with curiosity. Imagine you are sitting beside a river. You do not have to stop the water. You do not have to chase every leaf floating downstream. You simply watch. Thoughts are like that. One appears, then another, a memory, a fear, a fantasy, a judgment, a plan, a regret. You do not need to become each thought. You do not need to fight each thought. You do not even need to believe each thought. You can simply notice, thinking, and return to the breath, return to the body, return to the room, return to what is actually happening. This is not about creating a permanently silent mind. The mind may continue to speak. Let it. The goal is not to destroy thought. The freedom is in no longer being completely possessed by it. There is a difference between having a thought and being lost inside a thought. There is a difference between feeling an emotion and becoming the emotion. There is a difference between experiencing pain and building an identity around pain. And perhaps this is where the idea of the ego becomes more useful. The ego is not necessarily some evil force inside you. It is the structure through which the mind creates a sense of me, my story, my past, my success, my failure, my trauma, my beliefs, my image, my future, my awakening. And the strange thing is that even spirituality can become part of this identity. I am becoming conscious. I am more awakened than I used to be. I understand things other people don't. I have transcended the ego. And suddenly the ego has found a new costume, a spiritual one. This is why the path becomes so subtle. The mind can turn anything into an identity, even surrender, even humility, even enlightenment. And perhaps genuine awareness begins when you stop trying to make an identity out of awareness. You simply become present. There is no performance, no audience, no spiritual image to maintain, no version of yourself you need to defend. For a moment, you can be nobody. Not the successful person, not the wounded person, not the spiritual person, not the person who has everything figured out. Just this living presence, breathing, feeling, witnessing, existing. And maybe that is why exhaustion sometimes becomes a doorway. Not because exhaustion is inherently spiritual, but because eventually you become tired of running, tired of analyzing every feeling, tired of fixing yourself, tired of chasing the next answer, tired of trying to become someone, tired of carrying the weight of an identity that demands constant maintenance. And one day, perhaps, you simply stop. Not dramatically, not intentionally. You just don't have the energy to continue the search. And in that stopping, something strange happens. Nothing explodes. The universe does not announce itself. There is no grand revelation. There is simply silence. A few seconds of not reaching, and in that silence, you notice something. The presence you were searching for is still here. It was here before the search. It is here during the search, and it remains here when the search stops. This is the paradox. You cannot arrive at what you never left. You cannot find what was never lost, and you cannot become what is already present. Perhaps the deepest spiritual shift is not gaining something. It is releasing the belief that something essential is missing. Sit with that. What if you are not a problem to be solved? What if your life is not a test you are failing? What if this moment is not an obstacle between you and your real life? What if this moment is your real life? Feel your breath again. Feel your feet. Feel the surface beneath your body. Listen to the nearest sound. Then listen to the farthest sound you can hear. Notice the space between them. Notice the silence underneath them. You do not have to create that silence. It is already there, and perhaps presence is like that. It is not something you manufacture. It is something you notice when you stop covering it with constant movement. Think about the sky. Clouds move across it constantly. Some are dark, some are bright, some disappear quickly, some remain for hours. But the sky does not become a different sky because a storm passes through it. Your emotions are clouds, your thoughts are clouds, your memories are clouds. Even your darkest periods are clouds. They may be intense, they may temporarily cover everything, but they are not the entirety of what you are. There is something within you capable of witnessing the storm, and that witnessing is not always loud. Sometimes it feels like a quiet space behind the experience. A stillness that does not need to explain itself. You may have touched it before, perhaps while watching the ocean, perhaps walking alone at night, perhaps listening to music that suddenly made the mind disappear, perhaps holding someone you love, perhaps sitting in silence after crying. Those moments can feel strangely sacred because, for a brief period, the constant narrator becomes quiet. You stop narrating life, you simply experience it. The colors become brighter, the air becomes more intimate. Time seems to soften, and you realize you were never actually outside of life. You are simply lost in your interpretation of it. This does not mean your problems disappear. Bills still exist. Relationships still require communication. Grief still hurts. Responsibilities remain. Healing still takes time. But something changes in the way you meet these things. You stop demanding that life become painless before you allow yourself to be present. You stop waiting for perfect circumstances before allowing yourself to feel alive. You begin meeting life as it is, and that is a form of power. Not the power to control everything, the power to stop fighting reality. There is immense strength in that, because surrender is not weakness. Surrender is not giving up on your life. It is giving up the exhausting fantasy that life must obey your every expectation before you can be at peace. You can still act, you can still change things, you can still leave what harms you, you can still pursue your dreams, you can still build, you can still love fiercely, but your actions no longer have to come from panic. They can come from clarity. There is a difference between acting because you are terrified of what will happen if you don't, and acting because something within you knows it is time. One comes from contraction, the other comes from presence. And perhaps this is what it means to become conscious. Not to escape humanity, but to become intimate with it. To feel your sadness without drowning in it. To experience anger without letting it become your identity. To recognize fear without worshipping it. To notice desire without being controlled by desire. To experience uncertainty without demanding immediate answers. To hold your wounds with compassion instead of turning them into proof that you are broken. You begin to realize that healing is not always about removing every scar. Sometimes healing means no longer being ashamed of the scar. You stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and begin asking, "Can I meet this part of myself with kindness?" That question changes everything, because the wounded parts of you rarely need another judge. They need presence, they need safety, they need to be witnessed, they need someone to stop running away from them, and that someone is you. Not the future version of you, not the enlightened version, not the perfect version, you, right now, with everything you understand and everything you still don't, with the parts you love and the parts you hide, with your contradictions, your fears, your hopes, your regrets, your unfinished story. You do not need to become worthy of your own presence. You are worthy of it now. So perhaps the next time you feel the urge to escape into another thought, another video, another achievement, another answer, another spiritual teaching, pause. Ask yourself gently, what am I trying not to feel right now? Then wait. Do not force the answer. Feel your body. Maybe there is tightness in your chest, maybe heaviness in your stomach, maybe tension in your jaw. Maybe there is sadness, maybe there is nothing. Whatever is here, let it be here. You don't have to make it disappear, you are simply learning how to stay. And perhaps staying is one of the most radical acts of love, because the world constantly teaches us to move on. Move faster, become better, do more, achieve more, fix more, consume more. But consciousness whispers something else. Stay. Look, listen, feel, be here. The moment you stop seeking does not mean you stop living. It means you stop postponing your life. You stop waiting for permission to experience the moment that is already yours. You stop treating ordinary existence as something you must transcend before it becomes meaningful. You begin to see the sacredness hidden inside the ordinary. A breath, a cup of tea, rain against a window, the sound of someone you love laughing, your feet touching the ground, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the silence after a difficult conversation, the strange miracle of being alive at all. Nothing needs to become extraordinary. You simply become capable of seeing the extraordinary within what is already here. And perhaps this is what you are searching for. Not another identity, not another achievement, not another destination, but the ability to fully inhabit your own existence, to stop living 10 minutes ahead, to stop living 10 years behind, to stop negotiating with the present, to stop saying I will be okay when, and to quietly discover I am here now. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not permanently, but now, and now is enough for this breath, then the next, then the next. You do not need to hold on to peace. That too can become another form of grasping. Peace comes and goes, joy comes and goes, fear comes and goes, sadness comes and goes. Thoughts come and go, experiences come and go, but awareness remains available through all of them. So instead of trying to hold on to a particular state, learn to trust your capacity to meet whatever state arises. That is deeper than happiness. That is resilience. That is freedom. You no longer need life to promise you that nothing painful will happen. You begin trusting that whatever happens, you can meet it. You can breathe, you can feel, you can ask for help. You can rest, you can begin again, you can let go, you can stay. And maybe this is where the search finally becomes quiet, not because you found the final answer, but because you realized you no longer need to keep running after one. The question becomes softer, the mind becomes less demanding, the heart becomes less guarded, and life becomes intimate again. You look around and realize, this is it, this breath, this body, this moment, this imperfect, unfinished, beautiful life. Nothing to prove, nothing to become, nothing to chase for the sake of escaping where you are. There may still be dreams, there may still be wounds, there may still be uncertainty. But underneath it all is a quiet recognition. You are here, and you have always been here. Perhaps awakening is not the moment you finally become someone extraordinary. Perhaps it is the moment you stop overlooking the extraordinary fact that you are alive. So, when you finish listening to this, don't immediately search for another answer. Don't rush to the next video. Don't turn this into another thing you must understand. Instead, sit quietly for a moment. Let the screen become silent. Take one slow breath and ask yourself, what remains when I stop trying to become someone? Then listen. Not for a voice, not for a revelation, not for an answer constructed from words. Just listen, feel, be. Hey, maybe nothing happens. That is okay. Maybe the mind becomes noisy. That is okay too. Maybe you feel peace. Maybe you feel sadness. Maybe you feel nothing at all. Let it all belong, because the goal was never to manufacture a perfect experience. The invitation was simply to stop abandoning the experience that is already here. And perhaps somewhere in that quiet, you will notice something almost impossible to explain. The thing you were searching for was not waiting at the end of the journey. It was present in every step. It was present beneath every thought, beneath every fear, beneath every achievement, beneath every failure, beneath the identity you have spent so many years constructing. It was there when you were lost. It was there when you were afraid. It was there when you thought you had failed. It was there when you believed you had found yourself, and it is here now, not asking you to become anything, not demanding that you understand, not asking for perfection, simply here, quietly, patiently, completely. And maybe that is the final paradox. The moment you stop seeking is not the moment you find something new, it is the moment you finally recognize what has been accompanying you all along. So let the search soften, let the mind rest, let the future remain unknown, let the past remain where it is. Come back to the breath, come back to the body, come back to this moment. There is nowhere else you need to be right now. There is nothing you need to become in this breath. You are here, you are alive, and for this moment, that is enough. Remember this, you do not have to chase peace. You only have to stop running from the present long enough to notice that peace has been quietly waiting underneath the noise. And when the seeking becomes silent, what was always here becomes obvious. I stop searching, I stop resisting, I return to what is here. I am present, I am alive, I am enough for this moment.